Right. Hey, everybody. I'm Dimitri. Welcome to tonight's Ref Code Tech Talk. And what I was just sharing was I'm so excited that Wes is with us because even though I get an opportunity to work in parallel teams with him at my own company, I don't always have this kind of insight and this kind of view into the depth of the work that he does. And so I'm really excited to introduce Wes as our speaker today. He's going to be teaching us more about his world of data analytics, marketing analytics on the implementation side. And so I don't want to take up any more time. I'm really excited to learn. So Wes, take it from here in about 30 minutes or so. If you wrap up, we'll proceed with Q&A. So please do take notes and ask any questions you may have as we go on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dimitri. Thank you for that amazing introduction. Thank you to Ref Code for the opportunity to kind of share with you guys some of the things that I do on a daily basis in hopes that it will spark an interest in some of you. And if there is something we can follow up with, something that we can answer on after this is over with, I highly, highly encourage you to reach out. And we are more than anxious to help you along your path. I hopefully have host right. Yeah, I can share my screen. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and just kind of walk through a deck that I put together for us. So just a few slides, and it'll kind of give you context. Now, here's what I want to say ahead of time. I'm on one screen tonight. So if you have questions as we go along, please stop me and just interrupt. I don't mind being interrupted, especially once I get like into a flow, because I really love what I do. So sometimes I just kind of get lost talking. So if you have any questions, any comments, just tell me to stop, and I promise you that I will stop and answer any questions that I can. Or Dimitri or anybody, if you see a message in Slack or anything that needs my attention, please let me know. I need all your help tonight. The host has disabled participant screen sharing, so I can't.
Coming right up. I'm going to make you the host, Wes.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Thank you, sir. Let me get us shared out, my friends, and we will get started here. I'm going to go ahead and just put this. I told you you'll be seeing more Atlanta United tonight. I'm going to go ahead and start this from the beginning, and we'll get started. So again, welcome, guys. What I'm going to talk about tonight is the field of digital analytics. And I'm going to take you kind of from the beginning to the end of analytics, but I'm going to put a focus on the area that I work in, the implementation side. And again, just stop me if you have any questions as we go along, and I'll try to make as much of this as clear as I can. All right, so let me start by introducing myself. My name is Wesley Hall, and I refer to myself as a digital analytics implementation specialist. That's a lot of words, I know. But what that basically means is I'm the guy, if you think about data science and you think about data analytics, the people that actually run reports and that do data modeling and do all that fantastic stuff with data. If you think about the way that this works, all that data has to come from somewhere, right? So when you hear that I went to a website and that website was collecting my data, or I visited an app and that app was collecting my data, I'm that guy that helps. For good or bad, I'm the one that helps do that, right? I actually write the code that does data collection that all these data scientists and everybody do their work from. Now, there are all kinds of analytics packages out. We'll talk about a couple of them tonight, but I specialize on the Google side of the house. So I specialize in Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager, and using those both to do what I call cross-device and IoT collection. So cross-device means if you come to my website on your mobile device, if you come on your phone, and then at some point you hop over to your desktop, I write code that literally tries to stitch you together and say, this is the same person that was on the desktop and on the phone. So we can see what we call customer journey. I can see your entire all of your interactions with me as a company is what I mean when I say cross-device data collection. And believe it or not, I know this is not hard to believe, but there are so many things that collect your data nowadays. And I am fortunate enough, and we'll talk about what we call touch points here in a second. I'm fortunate enough to be able to write some of that code that collects your data from almost everywhere you go now. And we'll touch on that as we go along. I worked in both corporate and consulting positions, do a lot of consulting still on the side. And I've gotten to work on some really great sites. Some Fortune 50 sites. Actually worked on Home Depot, ESPN, and Comcast did a lot of data analytics, what the actual data collection for those sites. I had to do video tracking for the Lifetime channel. And if you guys know about the Lifetime channel, it is the station that puts the most cheesy, horrible movies that you can ever imagine. So I had to watch way more Lifetime movies than any one man should have to do the data, to write the data collection for Lifetime channel, but got that up and running as well. Also, surprise, surprise, and I'm a huge Atlanta United fan. And also I have a European team that I follow called Nottingham Forest. So if you guys ever want to talk football, not the S word, not soccer, football, then I am more than happy to dive down in soccer and football with you as well. All right, got a couple of rules for tonight before we get started, guys. Just like I said at the beginning, I want this to be a conversation, not a lecture. I've got a lot of stuff that I want to throw at you tonight. I'm going to come at you from a lot of different angles, but I want to hear from you as much as possible. So again, if you have any questions or anything that you like to throw in, just stop me at any time. And the other thing is I want to tell you guys is, I said before, I absolutely love what I do. So sometimes I get a little excited and I start talking a little fast, and then I'm from the southern part of the United States. So sometimes my southern accent kicks in and it gets hard to understand me. If you guys aren't getting what I'm saying, please tell me to slow down. And I promise you, I'm more than happy to slow down and try to make sure you understand and hear me. Okay, so let's get started, guys. I just want to walk you through really quickly what we're going to talk about tonight. I'm going to tell you a little bit about data, and I say data all around us, those different places that we can actually get data from and how we collect those data. And then I want to actually give you a specific definition for big data. You'll hear people talk about big data a lot because that's one of our buzzwords nowadays. Then we'll talk about, when it comes to big data, how is that data actually captured and how is that data used? This is what I want to go over with you tonight. And then we'll finish up talking about specifically about digital analytics, because that's one piece of the whole data pie, right? So we'll talk about how that fits together, and I'll give you a look behind the scenes at Google Tag Manager, that thing that I look for. Now, this is ambitious. A lot I want to get through in 30 minutes. So I'm going to be pushing it, but again, tell me to slow down if I need to. All right. And of course, we'll wrap it up tonight. Leave time for some follow-up and some questions. So here's what I want you to take away, guys. I want you to leave tonight being able to define what big data is. And I want to also just point on some of the stuff that you already know about data concerns. If I tell you about data, I'm almost obligated to tell you about some of the concerns around privacy that we have around data. And I also want you to be able to define data analytics tonight. And well, I'm going to talk to you about what I call the data analytics disciplines, those areas in data analytics where you may want to work. And then, of course, I want to give you a little bit about Google Tag Manager, or GTM's awesomeness. So that's what we're going to go through tonight. And again, just encourage you to join in. If you have any questions, let me know. All right, guys, let's get it started. Here we go. So when I talk about data all around us, this is what I mean. You know, data collection is so hot right now. Everywhere, you know, if you look at a job board, you put in data, you're going to get, there's a term that we have in data analytics. It's a really large measurement. It's called a crap ton. So if you put in data in, you know, a search engine, you're going to get a crap ton of results back, right, for data. So it's a super hot topic. Everybody's trying to figure out, you know, what industry, how can I get into this industry? How does it work? I'm going to tell you a little bit about that tonight. But here, let me give you a little bit of context. If I look at, do a search result in Google, I get about 4.1 billion results for the term big data. Now, here's what I want you to do. starting tonight, if somebody ever gives you a statistic, they say, hey, Wes said there were 4.1 billion results for big data. I want you to start wrapping your mind around what we call context, right? Put that in context. Frame that for me so that makes sense. What does that mean? Well, here's some ways to compare how many results I get for big data, what that means. A word as popular as weather, right? You know, everybody looks for weather. Returned 4.7 billion results. So that what I'm saying is the term big data brought back almost as many search results as the word weather. So on the high end, big data is somewhere between Joseph Martinez and weather, right? So Joseph Martinez, 5.2 million. That's a lot of hits, right? That's a lot of results turned about my guy. A lot of results turned about Joseph Martinez, but big data is bigger than Joseph. I know you find that hard to believe, but it is. So here's what I want you to take away. One of the things I want you to take away. When I say big data, what do I mean, guys? Big data, and this is the Wesley definition, big data is the science of combining large sets of disparate data. And here's the kicker. It's all about so we can make informed decisions. Now, you are going to hear all kinds of statistics. You're going to hear people say all kinds of what we call metrics, the way we measure things. It's all good. But the whole purpose, the whole reason we have this industry is so that business leaders and stakeholders can make smart decisions based on data rather than this is how we've always done it or this is what my gut tells you. We are going to make decisions on what the data tells us. And that word disparate there, I didn't misspell desperate. Disparate in this case means a bunch of different things, right? So what I'm saying is big data brings in data from all over, brings it in all together so we can make decisions. I get what I call online and offline data. I get data from all these different places, put it together, and you smart people will put this data together to help your stakeholders and your business leaders make smart decisions. So where does that data come from? Data comes from this thing we call touch points. And touch points can be physical, digital, or both. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. If you think about logically, right? If you think about, I know when I go online that there are all types of places that capture my data when I go online. When I go to a website or when I'm on an app, even when I use a free Gmail account, the data, the things that I do online are being collected so that, businesses and stakeholders can make decisions from. So that's a gimme, right? You know, all these digital places are collecting data about us. But how about physical places? So every one of you has this little electronic leash that you carry around in your pocket that you like to call a mobile phone, right? Or a cell phone. That thing is literally always available to capture data about what you're doing in the physical world. So at any given time, I know where you are. At any given time, I know, I was making sure I didn't hear a question. I know what kind of things that you're doing. I'm even able to bubble that up. Like if all of us are together on our cell phone and we have our cell phones in our pocket at one time, I know you find this a little creepy and hard to believe, but there are ways I can tell how many people are in a given spot just by the number of cell phones that people have specific apps and that type of thing on. I'll talk a little bit more how that gets creepy in a while. But your physical location, your physical being is something that we're always collecting data on. But even if you think about it on a larger sense, you could put these both together. Stuff like when I call you, leave you a voicemail, a lot of you have the service that will transcribe that voicemail into a text message or to an email to tell you, hey, you got a voicemail, and then you can read it on your phone, right? What just happened? We went from an analog world of me talking to a digital world of that data being captured in a text message. Well, what happens then is I can scrape that data, and there are things called NLPs, for example, natural language processors. Computers can literally read words and figure out what's being talked about. So if I am a telecom company, if I'm Verizon, T-Mobile, and I'm sending you a copy of your voicemail as a text message, as that telecom, I can literally read that message and figure out the kinds of things that you're like and you talking about. For you who have vehicles with things like OnStar in it, or if you have XM radio, those things are digital collecting gold mines. If you have OnStar, I know where you are, I know how fast you're driving, I know what station you listen to, and I know how loud your radio is. I even know if you have your seatbelt on at any given time. If you ever listen to OnStar transcripts, and heaven forbid any of you are in an accident, but if you've ever listened to the transcripts like I do, what happens is you will hear that operator, when they have to make a call to emergency services, they say, we have an unrestrained vehicle on I-75 that was just in a head-on collision. That means your car and the circuitry in it knows all this stuff. Not only in real time, but historically, it knows everything that we've done. So my point is, we got all these places that we collect data from. Well, if I get all these data coming in, how does that data get used? It gets used in what we call, in a consultant role, I go into companies and I talk to them about what we call the digital analytics mature, or the digital analytics maturity curve, I'm sorry. And that maturity curve means some companies are at the beginning where they're just collecting data and maybe running reports, right? Some companies are really, really fancy, where they're taking this data and not just saying what did happen, but they're literally able to run machine language and AI to say what will happen. They run what's called predictive analytics. Believe it or not, if I get enough data, I can say with what we call statistical significance. Statistical significance means if I run this same thing over and over, there is a 96 point, what is the first standard deviation, like 99.5 or something like that, for you guys who remember Algebra 1 and standard deviations and all that. But statistical significance means if I run this same thing over and over, I can guarantee with a certain degree of accuracy that I'm going to get the same results. That means I can start predicting what is going to happen by people's behavior. What can I do with that? If I know that if you see this, this, and this, you're more likely to buy, guess what I'm going to present to you? This, and this, right? Or if I know that this, and this means you're this type of customer, I'm going to do what's called prescriptive analytics, where I start changing your environment to match the things that I know you like. We literally can make personal, if you hear people talk about personalizations, we literally can change websites now on the fly to match the kind of person that I know you are. What happens if I start speaking to you on a more personal level is you start to love my brand more because you feel like you identify with me, and you start spending more money. So that's the power of having all this data, guys, is we can start personalizing, changing things, making decisions that literally affect our bottom line. And this is why this is such a hot field, because businesses all over, especially large corporations that collect a lot of data, they realize this and they are paying top dollars for jobs in it. Talked about personalization. Here's one thing. I'm going to drop this in our Slack channel a little later, but it's a fascinating video about big data and about the ways that we can apply big data. One of the things that points out in this video is something real interesting. There was two professors, and they were I think they were professors at MIT, right? Which is dangerous to have two people married that both teach at MIT. Nothing good is going to come of that. Because what they did was they literally wired their entire house, put cameras all over their house. And the first 2 years of their son's life, they watched everything that their son did. And more importantly, they documented, this is true, you watch it in the video, guys, they documented every word that their son said. And what they did was ran analytics on this guy's speech patterns from 0 to 2 years old, because they documented everything he said. I see a chat. Let me see if I can answer a question. The Social Dilemma is worth watching. Yes. Oh, I can give you the Social Dilemma, stuff about Cambridge Analytica. My gosh, I give you a bunch of stuff about that. Thank you, Byron. I'll try to touch on some of that more scary stuff in a little bit. Definitely. But all I'm saying is they cataloged everything their child said for the first 2 years, and then they ran these models, these data models that you see in this predictive and prescriptive analytics. What they found was things like the way that we learn words are less about repetition and more about context. Because they found when he said the word water, he most often said that when he was in the bathroom, maybe at a bathtub or the kitchen near a sink. And they learned that repetition is not the best way to learn a new language. It's immersion. It's actually being there in that context that helps you learn languages best. And they published these findings. Amazing stuff that we can do with data. Sometimes scary stuff as well. But that gets into my data concerns, the kind of scary stuff. Privacy, data breaches that you guys are very familiar about. So we have to, when you get in this field, one of the things that you will be entering is what I call a field of trust. Because a lot of times you are going to be in a position where you're privy to a lot of very sensitive data. And, you know, aside from people's credit cards and social security numbers, all those things that we consider like super, super protected and super, super private, and something as simple as my name and address, I get really antsy about that just floating around the internet, right? So when it comes to data, I just want to mention that, you know, data breaches happen, data gets stolen, our privacy is supposed to be protected. Sometimes, you know, that doesn't happen. But the whole purpose of this slide is, as we start talking about jobs here in a second, I want you guys to always be thinking and enter this field, if you're interested in it, with the recognition that you're going to be in a place of trust with data, and you need to take that trust very seriously. There are all types of regulations out now, GDPR, CCPA, all kind of alphabet soup that I will give you, that countries and states are saying, we are putting laws around the way you must protect people's data. And you have to be very mindful of those laws. Of GDPR is over in the EU, how they say data has to be protected. There's certain rights that you have as a consumer now over your data. If a data breach happens at a company, you have the right to know about it under GDPR. You have the right to ask for any of the data that a company is collecting about you. You have the right to tell them to delete all the data that they have collected about you. Other places, the United States, one of the things that we are doing that's, I wish we were doing better, is we are doing this on a state-by-state basis. So CCPA, California has its own California Consumer Protection Act. New York has a set of laws. Iowa has a state of laws. Georgia has a set of laws. And every law has some similarities and some differences, right? And the problem is we don't have a uniform set like the EU does. So you have to be when you start getting in this field, here's my whole point of telling you this. Data privacy and the way you protect people and protect their privacy is something that you not only have to be mindful of, but that you have to operate within the laws. And there are a lot of different jurisdictions around these laws. And you'll learn more as you get into this. But I want to wrap this up with something that everybody sees. And you might think, I know everybody has seen this. It might be a little hard to see, and you may have not thought about what this is really for. Those cookie banners, you know, when you go to a site for the first time, it says, we use cookies. Do you accept, or is it okay for us to place cookies on your site? That's an actual law now. You have to inform people that you are dropping what we call cookies, the little bits of information that get saved about them. You have to inform people. We're not, as an industry, we're not doing this out of the kindness of our heart. Right, trust me, because that probably doesn't exist in most places. But what we are doing is abiding by the law with these cookie banners that you see, guys. Now, let's get into, let's see, I see a chat. Do you use Google Ads, Internet Ads, data analytics, and consumer price? How do you connect Google Ads, internet ads, data analytics, and consumer privacy? Excellent question, Chalu. I'm going to answer that in just a second when we're going to dive down and we're going to actually look at Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager in just a second, and I'm going to show you how we put that together. Great question. Thank you for asking that. Let me get that out of the way. All right, here's what I want to get to. Digital analytics. Here's the field that I work in. And what is it, guys? This is another Wesley definition. Digital analytics is the science of collecting, organizing, and synthesizing both qualitative and quantitative data. So again, people can make smart decisions. So your stakeholders can make informed decisions. 3 areas that I divide digital analytics into: collecting, organizing, and synthesizing. And there are very specific jobs in each one of these 3 areas. So I'm going to dive down into those really quickly for you. The first area is collecting. Collecting is what I do. So the implementation guys will sit down and write code. And this is a very, very specialized group of coders. So a lot of you may know JavaScript and HTML and CSS, C++, blah, 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 all kind of alphabet soup, right? You know all of these different languages. Well, to be an implementation guy, you have to take that knowledge and then understand how to do it to collect data for analytics. It's a fascinating field and I love it. But that's the first tenet, collecting. The second tenet is the data scientists and the statisticians and the analysts that take that data and they organize it. So those of you who you may like coding, but may not necessarily want to do implementation, you can use coding on the data science side with things like R, which is a statistical programming language, with things like Python. Python will help you run what we call an ETL, extract, transform, and load. Take data from all these places, clean it up, and put it in a database so people can use it. So organizing is a second job if you are more into Python, R, those type of languages where you can organize and clean up data. That's the second job field. The third is synthesizing. These are the storytellers. These are the guys that do what we call visual design, or you hear people say data viz, right? Data visualization. It's a fascinating field. This is the people who can take art and science, left brain and right brain, and mix those together and take data. So imagine I collect the data, somebody organizes and puts together, then somebody makes beautiful, compelling reports that people can understand what that data means. So if you have an artistic mind and an analytical mind, put those 2 together, you will make a great data visualization specialist, a great graphical designer, that type of thing. It's an amazing field. Also, I unfortunately cannot. I think I got an award for when I first started building websites or trying to, I won an award for the world's ugliest website ever built, and it's on my mantle back there. No, I'm kidding, but I just do not have those graphical skills, those really good to make. If you see, you know, I'm forgetting the word now, but you'll see. I'll give you some examples as we go along of some great designs. All right. So let's get into jobs. So I told you those 3 jobs brackets that we talked about: collecting, organizing, synthesizing. What does a job field look like? Well, when I pulled this, it said by 2020 that our data science and analytics field is projected to grow by 364,000 jobs, right? Into about 2.7 million jobs in our field. There are about 9, 10 of us in class. If there are 2.7 million job openings in this field, I promise you, us 12 can find a job within there, right? That's great odds. So I want to encourage you that if this is something that you're interested in, this field is wide open to you. Here's one more statistic I want to give you. It said 39% of data scientists and advanced analyst positions require a master's or a PhD. When I read that statistic, I see 39% require master's or PhD, but you know what really resonates in my mind? 61% don't. I'm in that 61%. that don't have a master's or a PhD. If you're in the 32%, God love you. I'm so proud and so happy for you. But here's what I want you to know. As a hiring manager, I am very much interested in what you can do right now. So if you can walk in and show me some of these skills and put these skills into action, if you got a advanced degree and that beautiful piece of paper hanging on your wall, I love that, not a problem. But if you got a piece of paper hanging on your wall and you can't pull the data the way I need it pulled, there's not a lot of hope for us working together. So stay with it, learn this field, and you can do great things in it. All right, let me see what we got in chat. Oh, wow. I see a wow. How do you clap? I'm going back to that. What does a data engineer do? How is that different from a data analyst? Good question. There's not much difference than a data. It's just what your company chooses to call it. Data engineer usually is somebody who, I would say engineer, kind of designs the system, where an analyst will sit down and crunch those numbers, more like a statistician. So an engineer, in my mind, is somebody who looks and says, we have all of these different databases, different data systems. How do we put them all together in one piece? That's usually what an engineer does. Where an analyst, after that engineer puts them all together, you can run numbers for, and the analyst will start to run reports and make predictions and that type of stuff from it. Hope that answers your question. All right, we're almost there, guys. If we look into digital analytics, I told you it was a science of collecting, organizing, synthesizing data. Here's just what I want to show you. When, from a coding perspective, your language, if you decide to be a data implementation guy, your language is going to be JavaScript. That's going to be your go-to language, because just about everything that we do is in JavaScript. Now, for some of your IoT devices, when I write data collection for Roku's and Apple Watches, for example, or I use a different language there, but 90% of what I do is mastering JavaScript. If you are if you start writing for mobile devices, like I said, you will write either Swift or Objective-C, probably for iOS, or Java for Android devices. And then if you start going into Roku and smart TVs and all these, you might use a lot of different languages, but my go-to language, guys, is JavaScript. If you are in that second tier, organizing, you are using something like RStudio to write either R language or Python. So people who use R language and Python do things like what we call statistical modeling, taking all that data and making the machine learn, making the machine start to learn what that data is doing. That's what machine learning is. Doing things like what we call marketing mix models. So if you think of TV commercials, billboards, everything a company can do from a marketing standpoint, data analysts and statisticians and all that pull all that together and start to say how effective is our marketing. And there's even other models that they work with. One is called a RFM, recency, frequency, and monetary. So if I look at things like, how often do you spend money with me? Frequency, when's the last time you spent money, and how much monetary do you usually spend with me? Then I can start to predict your behavior based on these models. So again, there's all kinds of ways that data analysts, statisticians use data, but it's all around what we call data modeling. The last thing, that the arts meet science place that I talked about, where you actually get into painting pictures with your data, telling stories. You will use tools like Tableau, Domo, Google Data Studio, and you will put together the data that I collect, that a data scientist organizes. The last kind of tier job that I'll talk about is, people who do data visualization. And again, it's where arts meets science. So you learn how to tell effective stories, and you even learn how to influence decisions with this type of job. You learn the mastery of charts, graphs. Infographics was a word that I was looking for a little earlier. If you think about all these beautiful infographics, kind of looks like a big poster with all these different stats and everything on it. This is this discipline. So somebody has collected all that data, organized it, and then allow you to put it together to make amazing visualizations. With that said, and I'll drop this in chat as well, there is a cool website that I'll encourage you to look at. it shows how it all comes together. So dailyinfographic.com has just a lot of beautiful infographics on it. And I want you to think backwards as you're looking at these infographics. How did that data potentially get collected? How did that second tier of jobs, how did somebody sit down and organize it? And then this third tier of jobs, how did somebody put it together to this beautiful presentation that I see in front of me? That is what I have for you tonight, guys. I can dive down into actually going into Google Analytics and show you how it works. But here's what, and Google Tag Manager, if you ever invite me back, and I hope you will. But here's what I want to leave with you. Google Tag Manager is the tool, that's kind of my Swiss Army knife, the tool of choice. It is the product that I use on a daily basis to collect data from websites through what we call tags. Tags are just little bitty code snippets that says, if somebody clicks this button, count how many times they did that. If somebody submits a form, count how many times they do that. The data collection piece, so that a data scientist can take it and organize it. And then at the end, you get all these beautiful reports. Let me just show you this. I know we're 1 minute over, but I want to show you what happens. So somebody collects all this data. Some beautiful data scientist at Google organizes all this data. And then this is what we get at the end. We get these reports, these data visualizations. Now, Google Analytics gives us a bunch of canned reports. You can always, of course, do your own, but this shows everything that happens on a website at any given time. Now, here's a cool thing. If you want to learn how Google Analytics looks and works, Google has a store that you can buy Google merchandise from, and Google literally allows you to see the reports on that store. So you can go to Google Analytics, and I'll share that in Slack as well. You can go to Google Analytics, look at what's called the merchandising store account, and play around with Google Analytics absolutely free on a real e-commerce website. So Chalu, this is one of the things I said I want to touch on later. There are ways you can play with this stuff and to build up your skills ahead of time, right? So you can get in and play around with Google Analytics, get used to what a real e-commerce reporting system looks like, absolutely free. And this is another link that I'll drop in Slack as well. I'm 3 minutes over what I'm supposed to be talking about, so I will stop there. But let me wrap my talk with just a bit of encouragement. I gave you 3 areas that I consider wide open to you guys. It is my hope, it is my prayer that you find an area that interests you and then go strong into pursuing it, because I promise you the sky's the limit. I have quite honestly, very expensive habits. Like, I love my soccer games and I love my toys. So this industry has been very good in that there is a lot of opportunity out there, and there's room for all of us. And Ref Code and I am absolutely here for you if we can help you along that path. Thank you for the time to present. More than happy to take any questions or talk about anything you'd like to now.
Wow, that was me that sent you the wow.
Okay, thank you.
I sent you the wow, particularly when I learned a little bit more about I guess it's not a surprise to me, but in retrospect, but I never thought about the fact that even voicemails that are transcribed are data collected.
Data at that point. It's data collection at that point. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I definitely want to spend the next 30 minutes, 25 minutes opening the floor to anybody that would have any questions. I'll kick off with a simple one because it wasn't quite clear to me from the presentation, but are you an Atlanta United fan?
I'm getting there. Let's say that. That would be a yes, my friend. Yeah, and if there are any questions, I know that was a lot, and I know I went through that kind of fast because there's just so much bouncing around in here that I'm trying to compress and get out to you guys. So if you want to like re-ask or recover something, even if this time, if you want me to show you something, show you how a tag is made or anything like that, if Dimitri says it's okay, we have time, I'm more than happy to dive a little deeper, answer any questions that you have.
I'll kick off with a more serious
Yeah.
question. And that is the one around the three kind of areas: collecting, organizing, and synthesizing data. To me, when I hear you say that, that feels like building blocks, right? Hey, you got to collect it, to organize it, to synthesize it.
Yes.
However, the clarity that I would like to ask, and this is a selfish reason because I'm always thinking about the future of my own career as well. If I hear you talk about those three buckets, and it's the synthesizing that speaks most to me, because
Yes.
I feel uniquely left and right brained, and I like storytelling, and
Yes.
I like kind of engaging with my creative side. Am I still able to pursue kind of that category of data visualization, art and science, if I don't have the foundation of the collecting and the organizing of data in, the other part of the industry?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for that third tier, even though you're painting pretty pictures, you have to have there's one or two ways to go about it. You either have to have some very sound statistical knowledge, right? To be able to cull out those things. If you think of what an infographic does, an infographic puts all these cool stats on this beautiful page for you. Or if you run a report every day for your senior leadership, you're taking these charts and graphs and putting them together, right? There are two ways to approach that. In some organizations, there may be a data analyst, a statistician, a data scientist that is pulling all of those end results out and telling you, I want you to visualize this. That's more of an entry-level job, right? An entry-level job is a data scientist is crunching all those numbers and then getting the results and then handing them over to you to make pretty pictures for him, right? That's one way to get in. That's a great entry-level job if you're fortunate enough to find that. The high-end job for that is where you can literally, so a data scientist, remember, they organize that data as well. And they organize it usually, if you think about how Google Analytics looked when I showed you a second ago, all that data is there for us. And that third tier, the synthesizing data, the really good people at that can literally take that data that's already been well organized and pull the results and then visualize it. That's where the left and right comes together, is when you have the ability to take a data set that has been well organized for you and say, you know what, when I look at this data, I see this, and then I'm going to visualize it. That's kind of the high end of that side. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Yeah, it sounds like a very deep capacity to contextualize all the data.
It is, and that's why computers are so important, because our brains have a super limited capacity to synthesize, to look at enough data to make a decision with. Whereas I can run a query on millions of data points in literally a half second, right? So I can, and what good data scientists do is they can create these data models that can look at millions upon billions of data points. And that computer can literally start to pick out the patterns and show you the trends. That's what data modeling does. It says, I have this set of parameters. We call that an algorithm. I have this set of parameters that I want you to start looking for stuff in computer. And your computer says, cool, I got it. And it starts crunching through millions and millions of data points and pulling out those insights for you. Now, Google and other places are so good till they can use their machine learning and their artificial intelligence, their AI, to go and start looking at data, millions upon billions of data points. Their machine learning can then understand what the trends are in that data, and the computer can turn around and write insights in real language. It can say, hey, Dimitri, over the last 6 months, you have been trending up with this specific product that you've been selling. You might want to consider putting that product on your homepage because I see a whole lot of people are interested in it. A good data scientist can train its model to do that for them, but we've gotten so good that AI, artificial intelligence, and machine language does all that for us now, and then spits back natural language that we can understand to us. It's amazing stuff that we could do. We were always limited. Like our brains, we can only synthesize so much. So we're limited by that. At one time, we were limited by our computing power. So we always had this ability to do amazing stuff with data. We just didn't have a computer strong enough to do it. Now we're in a place where computing power storage is, imagine you walk around with a thumb drive, a 3 terabyte thumb drive, right? So our ability to store data and process data is I don't know how to even describe it. It's so phenomenal now that we're doing things that were 5 years ago unfathomable. There's things that we couldn't even imagine. And it's just because we have the computing power and the data storage ability now. Any other questions? Yeah, please.
Yeah, how do you see people within the industry wrestling with and engaging in the ethics of data collection? And maybe a similar follow-up question would be, do you see a lot of that happening internally, or do you see it more as coming from regulation from the outside?
Yeah, that's a great question. It comes a lot from regulation. And regulation I think a lot of regulation, this is my opinion, I think a lot of regulation gets its steam from constituents. And I'll tell you what I mean. I see your question, Byron. I'll answer that in just a second. I think politicians are motivated to push privacy because it's such a hot button issue, right? And it really gets support behind them. It's almost like that snowball effect, or that beast that feeds itself, right? So we as a public are very concerned about privacy. Politicians say, oh, they're very concerned about privacy. I bet that'll get me a lot of votes. Let me start pushing this through. So I don't see, and I'm a bit jaded. I'll give you that. I see a lot of stuff happening, and from a privacy standpoint, I don't see a lot of it happening because from a purely ethical standpoint, I see a lot of motivations behind privacy happening, right? But so a lot of that gets generated by regulation, which is a good thing. A lot of it gets generated also internally from companies by what we call risk mitigation. Because if Experian has another data breach that causes all of our data to get leaked out on the dark web, then we as consumers have the ability to file class action lawsuits and hit them in their pocketbook, right? So I think a lot of that, I don't see corporations for the most part. Maybe some of them, have an ethical streak to them. But I think the most part, what you see is privacy for risk mitigation. So we don't get sued, we don't get into trouble, our reputation doesn't get tarnished. And I see a lot of it getting pushed by regulation. So mismitigation and regulation, I think, are the driving factors behind. It should be that we're doing that just for the sake of that being right. But I don't think corporations operate that way for the most part. I think it's mostly around risk mitigation, and I think it's around the regulation that gets pushed out as well. Byron, I see a question that says, where's the best place to learn JavaScript? Great question. There is a great site that I recommend. Is I don't know if RefCode has anything JavaScript related. So Dimitri, please stop me if we do. But there's another site that I can recommend. It's called W3 Schools. And you can literally Google W3 and schools. And they have a bunch of different courses on there that you can let. JavaScript course is one of them. They have HTML, CSS. If you're interested in the data collection side and the implementation side, I suggest that you start your path with HTML, then CSS, and then JavaScript, because those are the absolute building blocks to everything that you're going to do from a data collection standpoint. A website, I don't care how fancy it is. I don't care how many great Atlanta United pictures we get on that website. I don't care how many times a website tells you how many times Atlanta United is going to win this season. Have I got to make that point enough? Okay. So yeah, I don't, however fancy the website is, at the bottom line, it all generates HTML for your browser to read. Your browser does what's called rendering. Your browser renders the HTML that it's given to make those pages happen. So to do your data collection, you have to understand the HTML and the CSS. That's what builds the pages. The JavaScript is going to be that language behind all this that helps you do that data collection. So start your path with HTML, then CSS, then JavaScript, if you're interested in the implementation side of the house, and you can't go wrong. I see another question. Let's see. What is a common practice that customers use not to personally identify the user in case of a data leak? Great. So if you think about something like JavaScript, Vinny, one of the things that, if you think about something like Google Analytics, by its terms of service, you are not allowed to store what's called PII, personally identifiable data. Personally identifiable information. You cannot, by terms of service, store PII in a system like Google Analytics. They won't accept liability for it at all. Everything you do in a system like Adobe Analytics, Google Analytics, any of these analytics systems has to be what we call anonymized data. So what I do is I store data about you in GA, but I only know that you are a number. I know that you're number 462897. I don't know that you're Vinny. And when you come back to my site again, I know that 426897 came back again. I don't know that it's Vinny. So I'm not allowed, as an analytics implementation guy, I'm not allowed to collect PII. So the first thing we do is keep data anonymized all the time. Then we have all these other regulations that we talked about earlier. Now, does that mean that a company doesn't know you by name? It absolutely does not. What a company can do is store your personally identifiable information on its internal systems. But there's a whole different set of checks that you have to have. You have to have what's called Pci Compliance. In the United States, there's a thing called Pci Compliance where it says you have all these guardrails in place. If you're going to store people's personally identifiable information, you're supposed to have all these guardrails in place under PCI certification. So there's laws in place to say this is how you keep data private, but what we do from an analytics standpoint is we don't store PII. Now, do we drop cookies and all that kind of stuff? Absolutely. That's how I know you keep coming back to my site, because you have that cookie on your site. But that cookie stores in Google, it stores what's called a client ID. And that client ID is just a string of numbers. It's going to be the same for you on all your devices, but it is not a personally identifiable ID for you. Hope that helps. I hope that makes sense. Yep, you're absolutely welcome, Vinny. Any other questions that you guys could have on anything at all, on specific job titles, fields, anything I can answer?
Hey, Wesley.
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry, go for it, Byron.
No, go ahead, Mike. No problem.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to know how we can protect our privacy. Hearing about, I know this is, like even like collecting the cookies, even, like all the collecting information. It got the websites and the apps got more smarter and smarter every day, and it's really hard to protect ourselves. For instance, iOS have like this do not attract function right now with all the social media apps. But how do you advise us to avoid any data collection, and help us like protect our information?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the only way not to ever be tracked is to move to the mountains and only spend cash. So there's no way to avoid it totally. I'm sorry to have to be the bearer of that news, but you raise a very good question. There are ways you could certainly protect yourself, right? And what I advise everybody to do is use a password manager. I used LastPass, for example. And what that does is it stores my password, but there are I don't use the same password on, and probably in my last pass, there are probably hundreds of passwords in there for different sites that I log into. And I don't use the same password on any site because LastPass manages them all for you. So the days of having one password written on a sticky note on your monitor is gone, right? Over. So the first thing I advise is always use a password manager. And then the things that we know about that are, sorry about that, some just flew past me. The things that we know about that are common sense, right? Make sure that when you go to a website, make sure that it's a website with a little lock in the corner. That means it's a secure site. Make sure you're always HTTPS. Just be on your guard. You are going to give up data because that's what the world we're living in now, right? But just be very thoughtful and smart. Everything that you learn in all those little don't click on email links that people send you and all that. We hear it so much till it feels a little commonplace now, but that's actually the best advice. So one thing I will say is password protection is a big thing. Everywhere that you can, use two-factor authentication where they send you a text where you log into that. Use that anywhere you can. So two-factor authentication of password manager is the greatest way. The other, after that, live your life, brother. Don't get so worried in how you're going to protect because just like you said, you spoke a truth that I don't know if you know how true that is. Every time we figure a way to hide ourselves, they figure a way to find us again, right? So it's always counted now. So live your life, enjoy it, but just be smart. Like I said, use that password protector. And hold on, let me see if I got it. I don't have it. And just be really smart. I don't know where it is. I was going to show you guys something funny because I've been doing this for a long time. I collect data and I know all the security measures. This is what happened. I saw this ad for, and I love drones and I love RC vehicles and all this kind of stuff. I saw this ad for a Traxxas forward. Traxxas is a major brand in RC vehicles. 4-wheel drive Chevy Bronco remake. This and it was so beautiful. And I saw the ad on Instagram and it was like $90 for this thing. And I was like, dang, I gotta have that. Clicked on it and I bought it. I just bought it. When I finally got it about 3 weeks later, it was a little bitty RC vehicle about this big. When I bought it, it was supposed to be this big, and it got here, it was supposed to be this big. And I said, what the hell? And I called the Traxxas company and I said, look, I ordered this Chevy Blazer, and before I could finish this sentence, he was like, sir, let me interrupt you. He was like, that is a fake site that you bought that thing on, and they have been doing that forever. Absolutely. And I fell for it. And the guy is telling me, sir, what people will do is they will make duplicate sites and build ads and send you to he's talking to me like I had never been to a website, and I build this stuff for a living. And I got duped literally 2 weeks ago because all that stuff that you think about, watch the URL, make sure that you're actually on the site that you are. Look for that little lock. It's so commonplace, and we get excited sometimes. I don't want to say even me because I'm not above anybody, but even me, loses sight of those little things. And I promise you, I got this little plastic car somewhere in my office here, and I'm supposed to have this really awesome remote control vehicle, brother. So my advice is all those things that man, keep them up. Yeah. That's terrible. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for your advice. Then, if I make any mistake, I wouldn't be, because Wesley has made a big mistake. Then this is my excuse. This is my excuse. I'm gonna take it from here, and I'm gonna keep making this mistake and use the excuse. Thank you so much, Wesley.
Absolutely. Just call me up and give me a high five, man.
Absolutely.
Yes. Absolutely. I see Shalu said, how secure, safe are those password managers? Yeah, Pat, I would say, I know we're closing in. Shalu, I can vouch for LastPass, and that's the one I use. I will say, be very mindful, even with a password management system. Make sure you research that a little bit. Make sure it's a legit industry thing, because you're storing your passwords in it. So it's a very good question, Shalu. I use LastPass, and that's the one I can personally vouch for. But I will say there's others on the market, but definitely do your research before you use those. Absolutely. Any other questions? We got just a couple of minutes left. If not, I tell you what, I will show you if there are no more questions really quickly. If I can share my screen again, I just want to show you really quickly the power of Google Tag Manager, because I want to show you what a tag looks like from when I say the data collection when we do it. And this is how cool Google Tag Manager, because in that presentation I said I want to show you some GTM awesomeness really fast. This is what happens. When somebody comes to you and says, hey, I want you to track this thing that happens on the site. I want you to track every time somebody clicks a button or every time somebody submits a form. I want to know how many times that happens. I want to know how many pages get viewed on the site. The way that it happens is something like Google Tag Manager allows us to build those things called tags that I talked about. And here, built into Google Tag Manager, if you have a account with all of these different companies, you can literally build these things on the fly. So if I have a Google Analytics account, I can have it build it for me. Floodlight, odometry, all these different things that you can put on your website. Google Tag Manager literally allows you to say, hey, I want to put a Google Analytics tag that's tracking a page view. And then I want to build a trigger to say, this is when I want that thing to happen. So if it's a button that you want to track, Google Analytics event to track a button, and then I can say, this is when I want this thing to happen, when the DOM is ready, or when you click a specific link, or when a form is submitted. So this tool is what I use on a daily basis to really do, Fortune 50 companies I use this for, to actually build the tracking that they need to collect the data on the website. Now you can write code by hand that does all this, but the cool part about Google Tag Manager is instead of having to redeploy an entire page when I get ready to add a tag, I literally, since Google Tag Manager is built in, I give them the code to put Google Tag Manager into their site. What I can do is when I'm finished building all the tags, I can click this submit button and it literally goes live to their website. So imagine now, if you think, you guys who develop know, we have this development life cycle where you have to do all this stuff before new pages and new sections can go live. Sometimes that life cycle with larger company only happens a couple of times a month where they deploy new pages. Imagine on the fly, in a matter of minutes, being able to go and make changes to all of your tags on the site several times a day if you need to. That's the power behind Google Tag Manager, and that's why it rocks so hard. And this is what the tool that I use primarily every day. And I'm glad I just want to take a couple of minutes to show you that, because this is, if you're an implementation person, tag management systems. Google is not the only company that makes tag management systems. It's by far the leading tag management system, but there are others. Adobe makes one called Launch. There's a paid tag management system called Insighting. There's other tag management systems. Google Tag Manager is by far the most popular, and it's the tool that I use almost every day. And I just want to show you guys that really quickly. And with that, guys, I'm going to take the last minute. I know I've said this like maybe too many times now, but I just want to encourage you guys to once you start your path, things happen. Sometimes path takes turns, and sometimes there's rocks in the path, and all kind of thing happens. The key is to stay on that path, right? Is sometimes not how many times you get knocked down, is how many times you get back up, right? So please just let me encourage you guys to keep moving ahead. Please let me avail myself and RefCode to you if you ever have any questions. And again, I just want to thank you for your time tonight. It's been my ultimate pleasure. And with that, I'm going to turn the mic back over to Dimitri.
Thank you, Wes.
Absolutely.
I think this is going to be, at least for me, one of those things where I have some time to simmer with all this information, right? Because as you mentioned, there's so many data points everywhere when you're working with analytics, and you gave us just a fraction of a percentage of it tonight, and it's still so much to process. So we look forward to hopefully having access to asking you questions in the RefCode Slack channel moving forward. And so as a next step, I just want to note that at some point tomorrow, Wes will be following up with maybe a couple of the links that he referenced. And if you'd like the slide deck as well, and we can reach out to him with any follow-up questions. And if I may be so bold, Wes, I would love to see a photo of this plastic truck. If you find it by tomorrow, if you could include the photo of the truck in your follow-up post tomorrow, and that will actually pique the interest of the people who are not able to make it live tonight, and they'll have to go back and watch this recording to know what that car is all about.
I'm going to put it there with no explanation. I'm just going to drop a picture of it.
Yeah, in reference to my talk, here's the picture.
I love it.
I just want to open up the floor real quick to anybody that would like to say any parting verbal words of affirmation and clapping and gratitude to Wes, and then we can close out.
Can I say something? Can I ask questions, please?
Go ahead, Belete.
Okay. First, thank you for today's presentation. Especially, everything is deep and easy understanding for us. I really appreciate for that. So I think this one is prepared by Tecton, right? Is that Tecton presentation here? This one?
This presentation was led by Wes, who was our guest speaker for Ref Code, which falls under Tecton. Yes.
Okay. So I'm looking at least internship in my side. I learned a lot, but I didn't get a chance to get in. Even I was looking in pre-internship. I did Microsoft SharePoint also. I know that in data analytics, I know everything, but if there is a chance, if you have created an opportunity, I want to contact you guys, or I think you're opening the door for us. So if you have in your circle, I just want to know if there is something new for us, for me. So that's my question.
Yeah, Belete, thank you. We will we'll be in touch because we want to continue to let you know when we hear of opportunities and when things come up that you can be more involved in. And so we will certainly be in touch. At the moment, I don't have anything on that, but I look forward to staying in touch on Slack, and also as we get to meeting in person again, having more conversations around it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep. Wes, thank you.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Wes, thank you so much. I'm sorry. Thank you so much, Wesley. I learned a lot today. I had to process a lot of information, but it's really great to know that, that how data have been collected and how digital analytic and like data science field is all about. Your interaction, the way you actually talk about your passion is really great. It got me more interested and more passionate about your career and your journey. Thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you so much for giving your time. And we're looking forward to connecting with you.
Yeah, same here. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed every minute.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Well, on that, we'll conclude the meeting, and we look forward to seeing you all around. We'll be in touch with more information moving forward.
Good night, guys.
Good night.